Okay, hi Steve. This is like my 8th time refilming this, because I'm always really insecure about it, but I scripted it a little more now. Sorry I haven't made a video in a while. I'm very depressed, but I just got off of work. The Kentucky Derby is today, so love that. I love horses. I don't like gambling. I just like looking at beautiful horses. Hold on, I might move my seat back. Okay, that's better. Is that how all the vloggers do it? I don't know. But I got my drink. It's mostly lime bubbly with a splash of the dragon fruit sunset refresher, which the sunset part is it's mango and it has dried dragon fruit. But this is just the shitty parts that got too wet to serve, and a splash of it. It's pretty good. I like it better than the actual like full drink. It has like 0 caffeine in it though. It has like, I don't know, 40 milligrams. So nothing. But the main point of this video is that I wanted to be a little vulnerable and talk about how excited I am for the 3rd season of AMC's Interview with the Vampire that is going to be based on the book The Vampire Lestat. Because I read that book at the formative age of 14 years old. Okay, editing Edie from the future here. There's a lot of stuff that happened. I was really tired when I filmed most of this, so that's why everything's like kind of spacey. But first and foremost, congratulations to Sherry DeVoe, first female trainer with Golden Tempo to win the Kentucky Derby. So congrats from me and all the other horse girls out there. Additionally, AMC, if you are watching this, what can a girl do to get a ticket? I've registered in the 1 iota request. What can a girl do to get a ticket? Please. I'm going to show you some very embarrassing photos of me age 14 and some very embarrassing opinions I had at age 14. I think the least you could do is cut a girl some slack, okay? So I first read Interview with the Vampire summer. We went cross country and I bought the book in the museum gift shop of what was the most culturally informed plantation museum my parents could find in southern Louisiana.
Okay, so for context, both my parents have a degree in history, and my mom actually has her master's in museum education. And when I was really little, she used to work at a living history museum and did like some very light reenactment, mostly like antebellum abolitionist era in upstate New York. So when we went down south, my parents were like, wow, it's really important that like our kids have this critical and nuanced perspective on this dark chapter in our nation's past. Let's go to the Plantation Museum that is like most transparent about the brutality of slavery, because we care about having a fun family vacation, and like that's something that normal families do.
So this actually isn't the copy of Interview with the Vampire that I bought at the culturally informed Plantation Museum. This is my dad's copy, but later that year we went to a library book sale. I want to say in like September, October, and it was one of those library book sales that had just like a shit ton of mass market paperbacks and donated books, and it was the last day and it was to fill a bag of books for $3, and everything in the bag is $3. So in this corner right here I had like 10 Anne Rice books that just sat there. I also want to be very clear, there's a lot of Anne Rice's firmly held beliefs and actions she's taken that I do not personally agree with. One of the most notable one, at least if you know me, is her opinions on copyright and transformative works. She did not like fandom and fan works, specifically fan fiction written with her characters in the Vampire Chronicles. And while I understand that as a personal like preference, especially since a lot of this work was very personal to her, she chose to oftentimes take this to court, offering cease and desists to fanfic authors, fandom websites. This is why it's very hard to find a lot of old fan sites, especially for fandoms like Buffy the Vampire Slayer, The X-Files, pretty much anything that could have had a crossover or would also host Vampire Chronicles fanfiction for their own safety and at risk of being sued. They completely wiped their sites off the internet. A lot of this litigation also played a role in setting precedents with the DMCA, which sucks. I also will admit I'm like a FOSS girly, and I love file sharing, and I love transformative work, and I love Creative Commons licenses, and I love the public domain. So I'm like on the complete other end of the spectrum there, but not a fan. I think I read like the first 2 or 3 and I stopped because I was like, okay, this is gay. I'm gonna Google interview with the vampire fan fiction and read about the lawsuits. And I was like, wow, this is great information to know about my new favorite author, Anne Rice. And I kind of like just like, goodbye, not doing that anymore. Additionally, there's a pretty common saying among fans of Anne Rice's work, which is that if Freud didn't exist, Anne Rice would have invented him. There's a lot of very messed up stuff portrayed in her works, and you kind of need to go into them remembering that every single character is a bad person. I have gotten some great takes over the last few days from Twitter, some of which are people who have not read the books in shock about things that are going to happen. Some are people who have read the books posting things like diversity when the emotionally and sexually abusive mother is transgender. Like, that happens in the book. Obviously, because it was written in 1985, she like still uses she, her pronouns, but like it is very textually implied that this character is trans. And also very textually implied that she abused her child. The other take I've seen that I found really funny is people trying to defend Armand, being like, you don't get it. What if he could just couldn't tell apart characters in the Commedia dell'arte? The Vampire Lestat is a book that had a really profound impact on me when I was 14. I think it's really one of the books that instilled in me this sense of like optimism in spite of the horrors. And sometimes that manifests as having a very positive affectation and seeming like you're letting everything roll off your shoulders and it's not that serious, and like casually shrugging off things that are very traumatic and upsetting and that other people would rather sit in the moment and work through. And sometimes that can come off as callous or sarcastic and kind of insensitive. I know, like, it's a very philosophical idea for like what is a vampire book. It's a very Star Trek philosophy, but it's really something that I've kind of, it was ingrained in my personality. The book takes place as like, okay, he's telling his backstory, and then the last scene is a concert. So they're actually going to be performing a concert, and there's like all these songs woven into the show, and I think that's something that like you guys would fuck with a lot. this does mean there are a bunch of songs that 14-year-old Edie decided she would like to have in the Vampire Lestat adaptation. And now I said I was being gonna be vulnerable in this video. And okay, this character is someone who I felt really connected to as someone who tries to be, you know, an optimist. But I think I'm going to exceed myself in vulnerability by looking at my middle school playlists. There is so much My Chemical Romance. And this is just a highlight. Okay, so for the My Chemical Romance songs, we've got House of Wolves, Vampire Money, still kind of pissed that one's not going to be in there, Sharpest Lives, and then pretty much the entire MCRX demos. I read this book September of 2016. I wonder why all those made it in there. Following that up with our classic Fall Out Boy tracks, the two I had from Folie à Deux, which I think is the most apt album, would be 27 and Tiffany Blues. My mind is a safe, and if I keep it in, we all get rich. My body is an orphanage, we take. And then I also put Irresistible. In the song Irresistible, there is a mistake where it says, if you know French, which I'm sorry if you do, you'll know that that's with the masculine pronoun instead of the feminine. You're referring specifically to a male lover. I'm pretty sure that's the only reason that song made it on the playlist. To quote Childish Gambino, goes both ways. Both Andy, You're a Star and Midnight Show by The Killers, also ones I think would actually work with Sam Reed's vocal range. But promise me you'll stay and fix these things I've heard. We'll make it go away. Getting into our more questionable ones. Some real deep cuts, some real like, oh, you were depressed when you made this playlist. Someday You Will Be Loved by Death Cab for Cutie. So in the book, there's these like songs that are written and they have a very almost T.S. Eliot vibe, like very like, they don't rhyme and they're really weird. Because of that, I have a couple of Bright Eyes songs from Fevers and Mirrors. Why was I listening to Fevers and Mirrors when I was 14? Great question. I don't know. And the color of the eyes of your former lovers, hers were green like July. Except when she cried, they were red. Rap by Green Day. Also actually like a great album. Like I go back and listen to these and I'm like, okay, I was so depressed, it's unbelievable. None of these are like songs I'm like, oh, that's so cringe. Like I'm actually surprised there's no One Direction on here. And then I think I also had Coming Clean by Green Day on there. You know, Lil Gay Baby. This is to say I'm really excited to see what the AMC team does. The first two seasons have blown my expectations away. If you told 14-year-old me they did an interview at the Vampire show where Louis and Lestat have gay sex on screen, I honestly think her head would explode.
President Kennedy sat up and looked around and said, "I'm back, motherfuckers," and then his head immediately exploded.
Anyway, Steve, thanks for watching.
Even if it makes no sense, I will say I love you back to the love that I am given. So I'm swinging like a fist fight, concrete colored basement.